Culture is the intersection of creativity and capitalism. Creators drive culture forward by sharing their craft with others. We're exploring the lives of amazing humans creating amazing things. This is Creator Craft with Adam Rivietz.
You mentioned you work with great people. That's how you've been able to balance this. But how are you guys connecting? Is video chat welcomed at the agency? How are you staying in touch with those folks?
So we use Teams, and I actually really like it a lot because we can co-work on the same files at the same time, which I really appreciate. We do a lot of video chatting, which I think is helpful because I think body language tells you a lot more than just, talking on the phone even. So that's been helpful. Doing check-ins with everybody, like a full spectrum of check-in, like how are you doing emotionally, how are you doing physically, mentally, like across the board. Obviously some people share more than others and that's completely fine, but I think just giving people a little bit more flexibility and space to talk about those things has been really important, especially with everything that's happening with Black Lives Matter. We've been making radical shifts within our agency to address that, and it has created a lot of open forums for people to speak really candidly and vulnerably with each other, and that part has been really incredible. It's definitely a difficult thing to grow through, but I think there's no time like the present to do something like that, and coming together on video at least, or not video, has been a really nice way to do that. I think people feel a little bit more safe in their homes to be able to have these really critical conversations. I volunteered at Leader Dogs for the Blind because my dad was blind when I was growing up. He died when I was 11. He had a leader dog, and it made a huge difference to me because it gave him his autonomy back. I could go out places with him by myself where I could not do that before, because he was able to navigate safely with me. And so it was something super important for me to do. So I've raised a couple leader dogs, and I was on their board for marketing for a while before I had the twins, but then I just got sucked into twin life and trying to balance that. So I'd like to go back and do that again in the future, but I just need the boys to get a little bit older.
Wow. I am so happy I reached out to you. You are like the epitome of what I am trying to accomplish in this show. Again, the idea is connecting personal life to professional, and you take your personal experiences, good or bad, the good being, the experience with the dog and being able to, have those moments with your dad. Before he passed away. And so thank you for sharing that. And then the bad, being in an abusive relationship, also thank you for sharing that. I don't know if you are vocal about it, but how you've taken those experiences and then turned them into, the work you're doing against human rights, the work that you've done at the organization for the dogs. It shows that your personal experiences, you don't just let go by the wayside. You want to actually have them impact you in a positive way, whether they were originally positive or negative, and you spin it in a way that at least seems to be providing value to others that they can learn from. And that's
the goal.
You studied in college communication. What are your top 3 tips for being an effective communicator? How can we all improve?
I think everybody has to find their different communication style. Personally, the things that I have found to be most helpful to me is first being really direct. I've had to finesse that throughout my career. I think in the beginning, my direct approach had got me in a lot of trouble. Not a ton, because
you
people
suck.
Yeah, well, people are very generous. I'm like, that's stupid. Why would we do that? Kind of chill out on those types of things. But being direct when in the beginning, to course correct things that might be otherwise benefited. Don't let people believe that everything is okay and then just be mad or grumble about it or have to fix it on the back end, because that's not how people grow. I am a big fan of having our teams create personal business plans, and this helps from like, this helps them communicate what they personally want to accomplish, but also helps make it very clear on what they need from me to be able to achieve those goals. Because I think a lot of times people on teams who will have a leader that they don't necessarily feel like they're getting enough out of, and the leader doesn't know that they're not providing the thing. So just writing it down, I think, is really helpful. And I think too, like asking the questions that are uncomfortable to ask. I guess that would be the last one.
What traits do you look for in team members or any new hires?
The first thing I generally look for is like their interest within culture. Because I work in a strategy capacity. I have people who work as strategists and people work as insights on my teams. I think being culturally curious is probably the most important thing you can do in either one of those roles. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to do like only ad-land culture. In fact, that's quite boring, because anybody can be a technical expert if you put in the time and there's enough systems that'll help us do that. Computers are increasingly doing those things. But the part that really makes really strong work stand out and makes teams really effective is having that cultural curiosity in a lot of different ways. So for me, we talked about a lot of my cultural curiosity is within like Colombia and Spanish speaking cultures and those types of things. Those are just things I'm personally interested in. I think it's fun, and I learn a lot in that way. And it also is like, it's brought me to a bigger understanding of the way that the world works all together. And that's been really cool. And I think that when we find people who are culturally curious about something that they're personally passionate about, it brings so much richness to the team and new perspectives to the team that you wouldn't otherwise get.
I'm curious, where did your interest in earning passive income and having a recurring revenue business come from, and how far along are you into it?
So it started a long time ago, because obviously I was one of those people who read 4 Hour Work Week back in the day, and I'd always wanted to do it since. I just never really I never had confidence really to pursue it. And then I married Ken, and he's got way more, he's more curious and he's more willing to fail at things. And that's been awesome. So we're about 2.5 months in, actually, in doing that. It's basically like, it's mostly his baby. I just am mostly cheerleading and like throwing things over the fence for him to figure out, which is really kind of fun. Cause he's incredible. He's got an incredible mind for data. That's his background. So data and digital marketing and all those types of things. So it's been going, I don't want to jinx it, but it's been going really well, and he's growing really fast. And it's kind of shocking me in a good way.
Can you share what it is at all?
Yeah, so he's it's
even
e-commerce.
The type, like, is it a physical product? Is it a digital product?
So he's sourcing products and like as a wholesaler and reselling them through things like Amazon and even like Walmart and like all these different online marketplaces.
You posted about different leadership styles. You talk about different traits that you'd look for in a team member you'd bring on. But what does it actually take to be a good leader, and how do you use that in your everyday?
Honestly, I don't know if there is one right answer for what it takes to be a good leader. I think leadership is something that you should constantly study and learn. It's constantly changing based on the needs of your team and the needs of the business. So I don't think that any one person has this solved. Right now, to be a good leader, it seems like it's defined largely by empathy and vision, being empathetic toward all situations, whether that be people on your team, the needs of the business, and just, the different realities of being in service of customers or in service of clients. That takes a lot of empathy, but also having the courage to have a vision that you can share with people. Right now, we're in a position where it's not very clear what the right answer is all the time. we we don't, we struggle with decisions that, are, culturally echoing decisions all of the time. Being a leader requires having an answer and sharing that vision, being transparent about where you're at and figuring it out. But at least being willing to to be that person to say, this is how we're going to respond, and bringing people along on that journey.
And I saw that you, already being in a leadership position, went back to school, or at least maybe it was online. You took leadership courses at Cornell. Were they worth it? Was the extra work and time, did it pay off? And give me maybe one thing, the number one highlight that you picked out of that course or those courses that you now apply to your everyday?
I did the online certificate program with Cornell. I thought it was really interesting. The things that I have found most directly applicable have been the frameworks, to be totally honest with you. There's often a big rift between what happens in academia versus what happens in the real world. Taking a moment to sit back and understand like how academics consider the topics that you're working with on a day-to-day basis is a really good exercise to kind of rethink and reshift those thoughts. But then you also have to put in the work to bridge those two things, because it doesn't always happen organically, because it's not like a Scott Galloway type of program, which Ken did and he loved it. It was immediately like, it's directly applicable. And he could easily put those things into motion on his day-to-day. Whereas the stuff I was doing at Cornell, that was more of an investment in like, all right, really challenging me to think of myself and as a leader and how like that works in the wider spectrum of things.
How do you level up your craft? What are you doing to continue your education? We spoke about the leadership element, what you did at Cornell, but is there anything else that you do regularly to keep leveling up your craft?
Yeah, checking in with people who are smarter than me all the time. I did a panel, I was moderating a panel a couple weeks ago, and this woman, Jess from MasterCard, had this piece of advice for people to have a career board of directors instead of just like a traditional mentorship. And that has stuck in my head, and I've repeated it to so many people since. But having that career board of directors has been so interesting to me. I have never really thought of it like that, but I do have people that I consistently check in with who I know are smarter than me and are like breaking down, breaking things and rebuilding them, or trying to do things in a different way. Right now, data science is something that has completely transformed our industry and the way that I work, the way that strategy recommendations come to life, the way that we build audiences, the way that we deliver media. I am not going to be a data scientist, but I have to be fluent in their inputs and outputs, right? So like leveling up there has required me taking time with all these people and breaking things and asking questions and challenging what's coming out of it too. Like, hey, can we, is it possible for us to solve this problem, or is it possible to answer this question? And then just kind of like co-creating that together, which has been interesting. So yeah, definitely having those people who are smarter than you is a big benefit.
From a marketing lens, as well as maybe the human animal rights perspective, what value do you think influencers and creators offer in today's society?
So when I worked on StoryLab, they did a lot with these types of groups like MCMs and influencers and creators. I always think of these opportunities as being culture defining. I think I know some brands also use it for like lower funnel conversions, which is fine, as long as that's the right person or influencer creator for you. The product integrations are always super interesting, but I think if you really want to understand how your product or service or brand is interpreted in culture, give it to an influencer or creator and see what they do with it. That's one way. And if you're not okay with it, then maybe just that was interesting to know, and don't publish it if you're not there yet. But also too, like these are the different these are the different people and groups who are defining what's next in culture. It's beyond celebrity. Like John Krasinski's show, like the Good News Show, wouldn't exist without influencer and creators normalizing that type of a show, period. So even like the celebrities are getting in on what these groups are doing, because it is making such a big impact.
How should companies adapt to COVID-19? I mean, there's marketing messaging, there's product, there's so many different ways. Maybe just a couple ideas of how you think from a marketing perspective they should adapt, and then who is doing it well.
Okay, so the first thing is to act with empathy. Inside out first. keep your home safe, keep your people safe, and set expectations with them that's your first priority, period. Because if you do not do enough for your team and your employees to keep them safe and protected, like you cannot expect that same kindness or respect to be extended to your clients or your guests in any capacity, period. The second component of responding to COVID-19 is just to listen to your digital transformation people who've been banging on your doors for a billion years to break shit and rethink the way that things work. They weren't lying this whole time. Chances are they probably have like incredible opportunities that they've already laid out and tried to sell in, or tried to push up the chain that have just been deprioritized in favor of other things. Start taking those things more seriously. Digital transformation is an incredible gift. It helps you scale. It helps you rethink things.